Hello everyone, welcome back to the workshop, and today I'm taking a look at something different yet again. And this has to do with an IR module for an open frame laser. I've had a lot of people ask me my opinions on them in the past from various manufacturers, and I haven't really been able to speak to that because I haven't had the need for one, haven't had the chance to play with one. Well, that's all changed. Longer has sent me out their 2-watt IR module. They're calling this the Ruby module. And we are going to be setting this up on the Longer B1 that I have that originally came with the 20-watt blue light laser. And it should be a simple drop in, and then we'll get it set up, see what it can do, and we'll check it out. So if that interests you, you want to see how it goes, stay tuned. We're going to jump right into it. All right, so I have the machine set up here on the open workbench, and we still have the existing 20-watt module in here. So a couple things. Now, this is what came in my kit. It was pretty much just the module. Now, for focusing, it does have a little flip down foot that comes down, and you do want to make sure that it gets down all the way because these IR lasers have a very, very finite focus point, and it'll go in and out of focus very easily. So you want to make sure this folds down and kind of locks in place. You'll be able to lower it down on the slot there and tighten up the screw again, then flip this back up. So that is fairly straightforward focusing on this one, and really similar module. It's a little bit smaller than the 20-watt. The fan is exposed up top, so we're just going to need to swap this module out and basically swap the cable, and that should be it for the install. So let's go ahead and get that done. So yeah, that is really about it. Just need to be able to tighten this thumb screw, holds it into that dovetail joint, and then we'll be able to flip this lever down to where our object is, set it down on top, tighten that back up, and then we can flip this back out of the way. That's going to be able to set our focus on any materials. Now you will want to, of course, be running some sort of spoil board here, and the nice thing about the 1064 nanometer wavelength is it really doesn't interact with natural materials like wood. So we'll actually be able to use a wood spoil board for this, and then be able to set our metal objects on top of that, and then we shouldn't have any issues of burning. There aren't any glasses sent with this, and because it is a different wavelength than your regular blue light diode, you are going to want to make sure you have some eye protection for this. And so that's one of the things I like about the Free Mascot Series 5 or Style 5 frame, is that they cover from 190 to 550 nanometers as well as 800 to 1100 nanometers. So these will work with both your regular module, the 455 nanometer blue light, as well as the 1064 infrared light for these. And these fit fairly well over my prescription glasses. So just keep that in mind when you're swapping out to these. You do probably want to update your eye protection if you're just using the stock ones that come with these lasers. Just to protect your eyes as well. So the next thing to do is just make sure that it still works fine in Lightburn. We'll get that going, and then we'll start testing it on a few materials. All right, so I've got the laser head installed, and Lightburn is seeing the laser just fine. I created a secondary profile for the IR module based on the original 20-watt profile. So as we go through it, if we make any changes, it'll just stick on that one. So that's something I might recommend you do if you're getting this as well and want to switch between the two. Now, one thing you may notice, like its other module, the fan stays on the whole time. It's not terribly loud, but you know, it is a whine that's kind of sitting there. Might get to you after a while, and that's just one thing I would love to see Longer do, is maybe have that with a PID sensor or something that can wind it up when it senses heat or power going to the module, and then winding it down when it's cooled off. But it is what it is. Now, one thing you'll notice, hopefully you can see it here, is there is a little red dot marking there, and as I bring the module down, it gets a little more in focus, and that is to kind of help us with the alignment. Now, this beam is not visible to the naked eye, so obviously we can't see it. You can't use a power-on laser for the framing, but the red dot should allow us to do the framing as well. So I'm going to start out. I've got this thin stainless steel card here. We're going to do a test grid on it. There were no material settings sent with this, so I'm just going to be kind of guessing based on a little bit of internet research and my experience we'll see if we can dial in some engraving settings, at least starting out with stainless steel, and we'll go from there. All right, so our test finished up, and it looks like we have some decent results to go by. So I ran this from 500 millimeters a minute on up to 3,500 millimeters a minute, and from 10 to 100% power. And hopefully, as you can see there, we have a decent gradient. It does kind of fall off a little bit up here, as you see in that 10%. They're even just kind of disappearing. And down here, it's not so dark that it seems overly inflated. So that's a pretty decent range. You have some darks, some tans, and then just some really light markings. And so I will play around with that a little bit to see if we can do some designs on some other stainless steel. But this will at least give us a ballpark to where to start with for that. So one of the metals that we aren't able to mark with the standard blue light laser is aluminum. Now, this is an aluminum sheet spoil board, at least I'm assuming it is. It's not magnetic, it's very lightweight, so I'm going off the assumption that this is aluminum, and this is bare aluminum. Now with the blue 455 nanometer wavelength laser, we can clean off anodization or any sort of painted coating that's on here, but with this one we should be able to natively mark this material. So I'm going to go ahead and throw this in there and run a similar speed and power test and see what our results are. All right, so the aluminum panel finished, and we do have a grid here. If I can get it to where it's not too blown out for you. But there is definitely some variation. I also increased the line interval because on the last one, I noticed that we were getting some lines, and there may still be some in here. So that's talking to the finer dot point of these IR modules. But what we can see here is that down here, we did it from 500 to 3,500 millimeters per minute, and then from 10 to 100% power. And what you're kind of gonna see hopefully here is this kind of band here of really nice white markings, whereas here it gets a little bit kind of almost tan, as if it's like overburned, and then up here we're not getting full corners. So, you know, we have a decent range here that I would say like 30% power and 2,000 millimeters a minute is really white, maybe even 2,500 and 40% power, kind of in those ranges up here where we're getting the best overall white colors. So if I can get that to focus on there for you, hopefully you can kind of see that range and what is possible on aluminum. So it's not going to be so much colored as it's going to be more of just a white etching on there, but definitely allows you to now mark bare aluminum with this module. All right, so I don't have a huge piece of brass, but I do have this section here. So I'm going to see if we can do some quick tests on this, because I also do have some brass coins, but I want to try to dial in some settings first. So it'll be kind of tricky on this thin strip, but we'll give it a shot and see how it goes. All right, so we did get some results off of the brass strip, and we have a bit of a gradient here. Now, due to the limited space, I just went from 500 to 1,500 millimeters a minute, and then again 10 to 100% power, and also shrunk down the square size and the settings just to give us a ballpark. But as you can hopefully see here, got some decent results. So what I'm looking at is, if we want a fairly nice dark one, 500 millimeters a minute and 60% power seems to be decent. If we would just want kind of a lighter color, we're going to be up around 1,010 to 15%. And then we're starting to get just a little bit of weird reddish tones out here in the 100% power. I'd have to do a little more playing to see what that's more about, but we at least know we can do some marking on brass. It's a little bit slower, but should be able to have some decent contrast and a few varying colors using this grid. All right, so I do have this sheet of black acrylic. This is able to engrave some plastics in acrylic, and so we're going to start out with black as it is usually the easiest to work with. And as you can see, I've used this in some other testings on lasers. This will not necessarily be able to cut through the acrylic. This really isn't a cutting module. This really is an engraving module. So once again, I'm going to run a material test on here, see what we can come up for results on this, and we'll take a look at them when we're done. All right, so we ran this test, and well, this was pretty much a failure. It just kind of made the stuff raise up, kind of bubbled it up a bit, and didn't really engrave it. Kind of has me wondering if this isn't really true acrylic, but maybe polycarbonate or something different. So I have a sheet of acrylic here that I know has worked well with some other lasers. So we're gonna run this again, see if we get anywhere, check the results when we're done. All right, so this sheet, which I know works a lot better, that came out beautifully. So we have a nice gradient there, and I'm getting nice and close there, hopefully without any glare for you to see it. But it's what we're looking for is those really nice, brilliant white marks, and there's kind of this band that goes through the middle there. Again, here they're kind of faded, here they're overdone, but all the way from 40% at 1,000 millimeters a minute on up to 80% at 3,000, maybe 90%. You can see that it's looking pretty good, but if you get in really close, and I don't know that it's going to come through on the video, but our line interval is still probably too high. And get that to focus just right. It's a little hard on these glaring reflective objects, but probably need to tighten up our line interval even more. So we'll need to play with that a little bit, but now that we know this works fairly well on a few different materials, I'm going to get some more real world kind of things, do a few projects here, and we'll take a look at them at the end. All right, so I ran through a number of projects to test it out on some items that you might use this for and I might use this for in the future. So thought I'd start and show them for you here. So first off, I have these little brass tags here, and if you can see that, just an example of something you might engrave for like a pet tag. So this has, your animal's name, so Snoopy, and then a phone number on there. Definitely could put some things on there. I ran this one at 500 millimeters a minute, 50% power, and I bumped the lines per inch up to 450. So it came fairly solid at that point, not getting a lot of extra lines in there. And it only took 3 minutes and 25 seconds to do this as well. So this coin is about 1.25 inches, I think. So that's about 1 inch wide, about 1/3 of an inch tall, to give you an idea how big that engraving is. So this next one is a challenge coin blank. I have a few of these. I've played around with some the fiber lasers and wanted to run it on here. So went ahead and did a burn of my logo on this side, and this is a vector image on here. Ran this at 750 millimeters a minute, 75% power. Again, with the 400 LPI, this took 11 minutes, 47 seconds. Did have a little bit of difficulty making sure that my alignment was correct. I was running in absolute coordinates, so on the next one, I switched it to current position and then just put my origin at the center of it. And then, of course, had to run my good friend David over at the Clock Shack, ran his logo on there, and that got fairly well centered in there. This one was actually just a raster image, and ran it in the Stucky mode with the same settings of 400 LPI, 750 millimeters a minute, 75% power, and this ran actually in 6 minutes, 47 seconds, so a lot less time. It is just a touch smaller on that side because obviously I can't have his logo bigger than mine, but as he likes to say, now we have coins to flip to see whoever's right. All right, so this logo is about an inch wide and a 1/4 inch tall there. It's got pretty decent contrast. I ran this again at 400 LPI, but this time at 1,000 millimeters a minute and 80% power. Only took 1 minute 45 seconds to do this. So definitely something you could do with the IR module. You could definitely engrave your own tools, or maybe it's, you're wanting to work with a business and personalize them, maybe tag them with their logo or just, their name so they don't necessarily walk off and such. But something you can do, and it doesn't really take a long time. So of course we played around with the acrylic settings, and this one can interact with plastics. And so I have this earbud case that it's kind of more of a matte finish. It's not a polished, and it's dark. So I wasn't really sure how well this is gonna come out, but on the back side, I did go ahead and work to engrave my logo. And if I can get that to focus, you see, it's okay. I think the plastic itself, it has this coating on the top that instead of engraving, it was kind of melting a little bit. So it didn't come out as crisp, but I don't blame the laser for that because I've seen some high detail in other spots, but it still got the point across. I ran this at 3,000 millimeters a minute, 70% power, 400 LPI, and took just basically a minute. And that's maybe about 1/3 of an inch, not quite a 1/2 inch tall and wide. So gives you a quick idea on that as well. Now, really wanting to highlight the detail that this laser can get into, we thought we'd try engraving a slate tile. I've done this a lot on CO2 lasers, on the blue light lasers, on the various galvo lasers. But the nice thing about these IR modules is that their spot size is so much smaller, and this longer one even reports to be like, I think 0.03 millimeters squared. And so I ran the DPI not quite that high, but I ran it up to 403 dots per inch, which comes out to be about 0.06 millimeters, and ran this tile. Now this is a picture that is off of laserpics.com. That's the imager website where they have both free and paid images. So they're pre-processed. I did set the DPI to 423 and approximately the size. This is about 3.5 inches tall. And it was ran at 2,500 millimeters a minute, 100% power. Like I said, 423 DPI, processed on laserpics.com through imagers tools. So I just used the pass-through setting in Lightburn. And this did take a while. This did take about 38 minutes to finish. But the detail is just incredibly impressive on this. It would be really great to stand one of these flat and hit it with some satin finish polyacrylic and such, and then get even a higher contrast. Then blow this picture up just big enough so it barely, or just fits within the boundaries, and I think you'd see even better detail from that. But really impressed with the detail of this laser. Granted, it's at a sacrifice of speed, but if you want this quality and that high resolution, it is going to take some time. So that is going to wrap up this video. I wanted to do a number of tests on a few different materials, try to give you a pretty good idea of what this IR module will work. This does fit on both the longer Ray 5 as well as the longer B1 frames, as far as I understand their website. And it has a pretty decent price point right now during the holidays. If you can snag it, you'll get a pretty good deal. But even in the normal price, for adding the ability to mark on metal without jumping into a whole nother laser, it does give you some decent options for you to work with. So I will have some links down below for you to check that out if you're interested. Some of them will be affiliate links, and they do go to support this channel. As always, I appreciate you using them if you feel that my influence on this was deserved. But as always, my goal here is just to give you good information to help you decide on what lasers you might need to get into and if they're going to work for you. So once again, thank you for being here with this video. Thank you for being part of my community. And I hope you can get out into your workshop and make something too. We'll catch you next time.